If you want to take a road trip in an EV, there are only two things you need to know. First is use the supercharger network if at all possible, and the second is, don't use the third parties. Because you can do it, it is easy, and I've got someone with me who has driven a mile or two on road trips. We're joined by Justin, the bearded Tesla guy. You can find him on X, you can find him on YouTube. Links in the description below. Justin, welcome. I'm Brian. Welcome to Futuraza.
Good to see you.
Good
to see you again.
Again, yes. And well, I will see you again next week because, of course, we are both going to be at the Michigan Summer Meetup. What fun we will have. There's going to be a huge light show. Simon from, Simon, who does the light shows, came out to Michigan just just last week and got it all set up, sorted. All the USB sticks are loaded. We're going to have a crazy light show with Cybertrucks and a couple roadsters. I'm not sure how that works, but there will be two on the stage during the light show. And then, of course, a all-star speaker lineup. It's a big event. So glad you could join us for that. I went ahead and reached out to Justin last year to get him locked in. So that was cool. So road trips. Now, you live on a coast, and I have seen you on other coasts. So how many miles would you say you drive in a year?
Well, just for road trips, I actually know what the number is because at tax time, I report those miles. So last year, I think it was something like 38,000 miles last year in road trips. A lot.
That is a lot. What is the deduction now? 65 cents or more?
It's something like that. It's pretty good.
It's generous because that road trip deduction, that mileage deduction, was designed with dyno burners in mind, which have very high fuel costs and very high maintenance costs. Now, as you know, EVs, man, you can't drive them on the highway, and you also can't charge them in the rain, I'm told. So that's two things that apparently...
I'm just glad we have a garage. I don't know what we'd do if the cars weren't in the garage. It rains in Florida a lot.
Yeah. You'll have to invest in umbrellas. I don't know if that works. But to be clear, there is no problem charging in the rain. There is no problem with any of that. And as you and I know, because we've both done it, road trips are a breeze. Tell me what a typical on the road in a Model Y crossing the country road trip looks like over the course of a given day.
Yeah. So ideally, you start early and drive about 1,000 miles, and that'll include probably 9 or 10 charging stops. I do not like to sit and charge for an hour, and I get that question all the time. Why don't you just charge more? You could skip the next charger. Well, as you obviously know, but some new to EVs, the fuller the battery is, the slower the charging is. So ideally, you would stay in the bottom half of the pack throughout road trip. So every time you're charging at the fastest speeds you can, and it makes a huge difference. So even though you're only going 100, 150 miles between charges, it's because you're staying at the bottom half of the pack rather than going to 100%, driving 200, 250 miles, and then sitting for an hour or whatever. It is definitely faster to stop more often for less time.
When Kyle Connor from Out of Spec lost his mind during the lockdown and decided, I am going to join a team setting the new Cannonball record in an EV. They hopped in a Taycan, sorry, Porsche, and headed out. And they did it mathematically. They were very methodical with it. And in their, 48, 50-hour drive, they only spent 2 hours and 40 minutes charging coast to coast. They were not babying that battery. They were hauling. They were going as fast as they practically could without causing serious bodily injury. And 2 hours and 40 minutes of charge is all they needed. They did not charge to 100%. Don't charge to 100%. You're going to have a bad time if you do. You're going to hate the experience. 100% is what you do when you're sitting down having lunch and you look at your app and it says, by the way, you're almost done charging. And you go, oh, I'm not done eating. Boop, bump it up. And now you'll get, what you're really doing is getting time, because too often That's what you need. What are Now we've talked about this before, but what are some of your longer journeys in a single day in an EV?
About 1,000 miles. I'm sure plus or minus, whatever, but it's about 1,000 miles a day is what I do when I travel. That's roughly 18 hours of driving and charging, um, and then sleep hopefully for close to 8 hours, and then wake up and do it again.
What would you say is the difference? Because you've had an opportunity recently to road trip without FSD. How big is the difference having FSD on a road trip?
It's such a big difference, honestly. Yeah, the Cybertruck does not even have basic autopilot, unfortunately. Um, and yeah, you definitely notice it's not there. Autopilot just takes so much of the little stuff out of the equation. And when you're driving, you don't like, you're still paying attention, you're still, being careful, but just being able to hold your hand on that wheel, not do the thousands of micro adjustments for 1,000 miles, that's a huge difference. You don't feel worn out when you get to your destination, even though you've driven a ridiculous amount of miles. It's huge. And that's just basic autopilot.
And on highways, basic autopilot and FSD are not that much different, apart from the fact that lane changes do not take place on autopilot. You have to
Yeah,
disengage, change lanes yourself, re engage, which is still fine. For a feature
yeah,
that's included for free in a car, it is still better than most cars' premium offerings. The first inkling that I got that FSD was going to change the game for road trips was maybe 4 years ago. I don't remember now, but Tim Dodd, the everyday astronaut, had to hustle from the Midwest down to Florida to catch a launch because you know how launch windows can be. They can move a bit. And he had to drive something like 13, 14 hours straight, which normally would absolutely destroy you. And he said when he arrived, he's like, well, I wouldn't say I feel fresh, but I'm not dead. I feel good. I
yeah.
feel fine. The longest drive I've ever done in gas was about 12 hours. I drove from Billings, Montana, all the way back to Everett, Washington on a single shot. And when I got back, I needed days to recover because it was brutal. I've already done two 12-hour drives in the Tesla. And both times I get there and I'm like, yeah, I'm tired. It's been a long day, but I am ready for tomorrow. It's Supervising is so much easier than driving.
Yeah.
And for the people who keep saying, yes, but it's nowhere close to ready. I disengage constantly. You may need to give up a little bit of control because that's the type of driver who would sit next to any full meat driver and intervene constantly too. Yeah, go faster, change lanes. What are you doing? Calm down. You're not in control right now. I am. So, and I do that as well. I will, when I get on the highway, I set it to minimal lane changes and I'll be in charge of the lane changes. I just prefer it that way. That's just me. That's not a safety critical intervention. When you're out in the middle of the country, how plentiful are chargers?
It's actually a really good example of this. In 2020, I took my first long distance road trip. It was in May. We drove from Indianapolis down to Pensacola, basically. Um, and from that day forward, we took countless trips to Orlando. So, Indiana to Florida has always been this road trip for us. And in 2020, there was one V3 charger, and it was in Nashville, and it was exciting. But I mean, today there's no V2 chargers that I had to stop at all in that whole stretch, which is pretty incredible. Just uh, how this has changed so much. And that was 2022. I did the first trip from Indy to Florida without stopping at a single V2. And once you start getting west, it's still getting better, but there are some gaps. We finally have one B3 charger in the middle of Western Texas, and that's a huge game changer. But there's so many stops in the western half of Texas where it's V2. It's not really fast. And when it's super hot outside, it's already kind of limited. And then somebody plugs in with you because there's only six stalls, right? So that's not ideal. But these V3s, as they pop up, just makes everything so much better. But right now, in my mind, that's the only place that I can think of that I don't think that there's enough V3 chargers in place.
When you hear people say that there are not enough chargers, that it is a problem, I always ask them, really, where is your drive? Let me pull it up on PlugShare or a better route planner. And I have had, and I'm not joking, 3 separate people plot a course from West Texas up through some back highway into the Southwest. And I know there's no way that all 3 of you are going on this path that no one takes. This is a coordinated effort. This has got to be the one spot left where there are not enough chargers. So all of the sponsored liars show up with the same talking point. That's my perception. There's just no way I've met 3 of them in the wild.
That's interesting. I think Telluride was a location for a while because of the altitude climb and the distance going up mountain was an issue for some time, but I don't think that's even an issue anymore. So now I'm kind of curious. You're going to have to send me the details of what this location is.
Sure. What are the highest speeds you see per kilowatt hour charging rates on V3?
So yeah, in the Marl Y 252. So it's a 250 kilowatt charger. In the Cybertruck, though, 258, and it's starting to creep up a little bit. So I think Tesla's starting to unlock closer to 260 on their way to 270, is my guess on V3 chargers. I don't know that to be fact. That is pure speculation. But I believe we're headed to 270 capability on V3 when they're not completely full.
And do you know what the charging rate is on a Chevy Bolt?
50 kilowatt charge rate, 55 maybe 50.
Well, good news. It's not a
Yeah.
very big battery, but you're still going to be here a while.
Oh yeah.
Uh, but the Bolt is a low cost compliance car.
Hmm.
I feel bad for people who may have bought them new unless they got some kind of outrageously insane deal on them. They're great commuter cars. Secondhand, you can get amazing bargains on them. I've seen them all the way down with incentives, well under 15,000, with low miles, with under 20, 30, even 40,000 miles on them. So it's, different car for different use cases. The people who say, "Hey, I don't want FSD. I don't want premium sound. I don't want all these bells and whistles. Just give me a cheap car and I'll buy it." And I say, "No, you won't, because those exist and people don't buy them." It's like the people who say they want a smaller pickup. It'd be cool to have like an old Datsun pickup, but they make small pickups and people don't buy them. I know what people say they want and what they actually want can be 2 different things. I want a phone that I don't have to charge for a week. They make that phone. It's $1,000 and it's the size of a battery pack, a battery bank, because it is a battery bank with a screen on it. So sometimes you have to
Yeah.
understand that when Homer says he wants to invent the Homer, no one's going to buy that car. So,
Yeah. It's got to be affordable, but it still has to charge fast. It still has to have the feature. It can't be giving something big up like that. And I think with the Chevy Equinox EV, I'm really excited to check it out. I think I was surprised it was this low, but 150 kilowatt charge rate, I think, is max on that thing.
mm,
But price is right, space is good, and the Chevy Bolt right there at the end. If you could find a dealer that wasn't bending you over, you could get a Bolt EUV, the bigger one, for like $19,000 brand new after the tax credit. It was like, oh my god, this is such a good deal. But yeah, it has compromises though. You can't road trip in it, so
no, if your road trips are a couple hundred miles, you'll be fine. But if you're crossing the country, I wouldn't recommend it. What I'm waiting to
yeah.
see is some high school graduates that take out the parents' EV and decide they're going to spend 3 months on the road and not pay for charging once, because you can do it, but you got to be patient and careful. And I look forward to somebody having the kind of time it takes to make a video like that. But we'll see if it ever happens. So,
I'll stay
just
tuned.
yeah, right. So, Justin, I do want to thank you for for hanging out with me on this presentation. In a matter of days, we're going to be in Michigan. Please join us, Sandy Monroe, the Rebellionaire team, a bunch of Rebellionaires on here. And that is not because I set it up that way. It's just a coincidence. These are a lot of the biggest producing people on YouTube and X, and I reached out to them and I made it happen. So we've got some very fun names coming, and it'll be a lot of fun. And yeah, and we got some cool stuff to share with you when you get there. So in the comments, you guys, what do we miss? What do we misunderstand? What makes road trips amazing? And of course, what makes them truly, truly terrible? Let's hear it. Are EVs dead? I've been getting that a lot lately. EVs are dead. I've got one data point that proves it. So, of course, that means the journey has ended. Everybody else, like, subscribe, smack the thumbs. Maybe head over to the Bearded Tesla Guy, see what he's up to, because he produces a whole lot of content. He is one of only two EV content producers who I can say with confidence log more miles than me. And that is no small feat. And my hat is off to you because I'm already kind of at my limit. I don't know if I could do any more. So someone has to do it. So in the comments, do what you got to do. Like, subscribe, smack thumbs, yours, your friends. It doesn't matter. It's all the same to me. And stay tuned, stay juicy, and I cannot wait to hear from you clever robots in Michigan.